If you're a physician who has ever considered working in locum tenens, maybe you wanted to better understand how it works, what the process is, I want to break it down for you. As a former recruiter who has worked in both locum tenens and permanent placement, I've worked agency, in-house, I've done marketing and sales, I've done training, and I've been a recruiter. Well over a decade, I've placed hundreds of doctors and also been an educational consultant for various programs and centers, MGMA, Healthy Careers, residency, curriculum. What I want to do with this channel is be a source of information to help any aspiring physician, advanced practitioner, clinical professional to better understand how the world of physician recruitment works, what the processes are, the kind of things that go on behind the scenes that you might not always hear about. And so that's what I want to do today, specifically breaking down locum tenens, demystifying it, and explaining who is or isn't eligible, what it means, why it's not really called locum tenens anymore, what the CMS guidelines are, and how the agencies work. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. CMS actually retired the term locum tenens about 9 years ago in the 21st Century Cures Act. The reason being was not only the addition of physical therapists to locum tenens coverage, but also mainly from the billing perspective, which we'll talk about here in a minute, between the Q5 billing modifier or the more standard rigorous Q6 modifier, which is actually a payment for time. So locum tenens is no longer used. It's now known as a fee-for-time compensation arrangement. True locums is what CMS defines as the following. There are exceptions we'll talk about here in a minute in a few different ways, but a true locums cannot be an advanced practitioner, although plenty do locum tenens. Traditionally, it has to be an MD or a DO that provides coverage for no more than 60 days. They do not need to be consecutive. You could do 2 days a week and spend 30 weeks before you actually reach that milestone. So let's look at the Q5 and the Q6 modifier. The Q5 modifier is what is put on billing when no financial compensation is exchanged. So think of Dr. Jones has a practice. Dr. Smith has a practice nearby. Dr. Jones wants to go on vacation for a week, and he says, well, Dr. Smith, can you come in and cover for me? On the Q5 modifier, they would bill under the NPI of the original physician, but it would be noted that this is a Q5 situation where someone else is actually doing the work. Now, that doctor would not get paid. It would go to the practice normally. This is a scratch my back, I scratch your back thing. So down the road, Dr. Smith and Dr. Jones can kind of jostle, you cover me this week, I'll cover you that week. It just simplifies it. The money still goes to the practice. The Q6 modifier is the more traditional usage of locum tenens, the fee-for-time compensation. And these are where the requirements really kick in for this to be effective. It can only be 60 days. The original physician has to be there. It cannot be that someone has left. It cannot be you're just trying to expand. It cannot be that someone's passed away. The original doctor needs to be there. So what are some of the things that someone can use a true locum tenens for? Vacation, CME, sabbatical, sick leave, military service, maternity, paternity leave. This is all under the rubric of the doctor is there and coming back. Now, I mentioned the 60-day rule. There is an exception to this rule, and that's military service. If someone is deployed in a longer period of deployment where they're gone, that 60-day requirement is waived. So again, supplemental staffing, not an option. Replacing someone that left or that's passed on, not an option. Another option is when a locum sees a patient under this definition, they can provide globally ongoing follow-up care after seeing them, even if their time has run out. So they will still be covered if they provide that follow-up care coverage for a patient. So there is something known as the reset loophole. And the reset loophole is when a practice needs more than 60 days. They can have a locum work for 59 days, then the original doctor can return, just has to at least be there for 1 day seeing patients and has to be physically present. You not want a CMS audit where they're just calling it in, sipping Mai Tais in the Bahamas. They actually have to physically be present. But once that happens, the time period is stopped and that individual can come back the very next day and start all over under that 60-day limit. So how does this work? Let's talk again about the Q6 modifier. What happens in this situation is the locum will work and bill under the original NPI of the doctor that is in place. And this makes credentialing much simpler. You can move in, you can work very quickly and not have to go through the prolonged credentialing process. What are some of the benefits of locums? You make good money. You have a lot of choice in where, when, and how long you want to work. Flexibility, that kind of travel lifestyle that a lot of people really seem to love. Traveling and housing perks, avoiding a lot of the administrative baggage that some people have a hard time with that might come with the more tenured long-term roles. What are some of the downsides? No benefits. You are a 1099 independent contractor, even though, and we'll talk about here in a minute, how locum tenens firms work and why that's actually beneficial for all parties involved. They do take their percentage. We'll get into that here in a minute, but they take care of a lot of the administrative work for you. So you might feel in some ways that you are acting as a W-2, but you're not. You are a 1099, and it is very important to keep that in mind because no PTO, no retirement, no medical, no benefits, disability, vacation, none of that stuff. You get paid for what you work, and you need to make sure that you're properly addressing that come tax time. So now what about those situations where supplemental staffing is needed, or something beyond the 60 days without a return, or advanced practitioners? For those that don't necessarily qualify for the CMS definition of a true locums. Well, in the true locums definition, you can come in easily, bill immediately under the NPI of the original physician and get to work immediately. The outside of that is you need to credential fully brand new. You need to come in, you need to get on the payers, you need to go through the process, and it's a prolonged period of time. But outside of that, whether it's a physician looking to support with supplemental staffing or to help a practice grow. There was a time when I did locum tenens recruitment and sales and did permanent recruitment and sales. And sometimes when I would speak with a client that was looking for a permanent role and having a hard time, I would say something like, well, would you consider maybe bringing a locum tenens in to do some of the work and keep things going and help bring in the revenue while we continue the search for a permanent position? A lot of times that would work. Well, that case would not qualify as a true locum. So they would have to come in, be credentialed all over, brand new. Again, this is for doctors that don't qualify under the definition of a true locum. And this is how any advanced practitioner would have to do it. Advanced practitioners are very common in locums. There's a lot of work for advanced practitioners. And there's two specific ways that advanced practitioners can operate within this definition. One is the one that we just mentioned. Just come in and be fully credentialed. This is the kind of freedom to practice as they would otherwise. It's the most broad and open way, but it's time consuming and it takes the effort of going through the credentialing process. And this way, they would be billing under their own NPI. The second way is what's known as incident to billing. Incident to billing is when an advanced practitioner is working with a physician who has to be physically present. There can't be any new appointments. These need to only be follow-ups, and they cannot see any new patients or handle new problems that arise under this model. As we mentioned from the 21st Century Cures Act, physical therapists, and only physical therapists, no one else beyond that, have been included under the potential Q6 modifier billing model, but with certain restrictions. They can only operate if the practice is located in a healthcare provider shortage area, a medically underserved area, or a designated rural area. If the location is in an affluent urban area, this is not an option for physical therapists. Now let's pull the curtain back and look a little bit at the mechanics of how you get paid and how these firms operate. Locum tenens agencies have a tri-party contract arrangement. They have a client service agreement with a client, a CSA, or an independent contractor agreement, an ICA. Specifically, the company will serve as the intermediary. This is a massive benefit for both the client and the candidate. It allows the client to get the work that they need, generally with a lot of expertise and convenience, sometimes expedience, and same for the individual or individuals looking to practice as locum tenens. The way that payment works is the locum tenens agency will handle the time cards. They will bill the client will pay them, usually pay an hourly rate. They'll usually bill them for malpractice because the agency will provide malpractice. There's just a variety of negotiations that will go on with the sales, business development team and the client. And there's a couple things going on there. One, the company wants to make their money. So they also want to make sure that they're giving a job that pays to a locums that will take it. And so they negotiate. And this is behind the scenes stuff. As a physician or advanced practitioner, you're not going to really see this, but I'm just really trying to pull the curtain back. This is how it works. Generally, agencies go for a 30% margin, meaning they'll keep 30% of what they bill from the client. More if they can, sometimes less. It depends on a variety of things. So there's some restrictions on how much the margins can be. Some of the prison systems and state, like mental health hospitals, have some restrictions on that. But at the end of the day, no locum has to take any job. And so a good marketer will make sure that they're working with the client so the client understands, hey, we need to make our money to function. We've got these bills to pay, and we'll go over that here in a minute. But if we put this out there and no one takes it, that's because it's not lucrative enough. And so that's how that works. And this will go a few different places. One, you have a business development person, sales, marketing. These are terms that are fairly used interchangeably. I'm trying to keep consistent with them, but if I refer to any of those, that's where I'm working on in these, they're called split desk models, where you have one side that's client facing and one side that's candidate facing. Sometimes you get some crossover, but generally as a practicing clinician, you're not going to be really dealing with the business development side so much. You're just going to be working with the recruiters. But both of them get paid. So part of the margin, the business development person who brings the jobs in and the recruiter who fills them will get a small percentage. It can be anywhere from 2, 3, 4%. It really depends on the company, the size of the company. But think about this too. These are payments made generally per hour, sometimes per day. Usually some surgery specialties will be per day, but you're really paying per hour. And so if it's $250 per hour that they're billing the client, they're paying the doctor $175 per hour. That percentage is going to the company, and we're going to go through here in a minute. As we close up, I want to walk through what that covers so you have an idea of what's going on, what to expect working with an agency, and then I want to leave a checklist that I'm going to copy and put. Maybe I'll pin it in the comment section that you can look at and go through. Make sure you're asking these questions when you're having these conversations with these companies. But the first is licensing and verification. So the locums companies are very large companies with multiple departments. Outside of recruiting and business development, they have their licensing and verification office. Now, this is a lot of work off the client side, because what they do is this is all of the verification. You submit all of your documents and your forms the best you can. They'll create what's called a credentialing pack, and they do the verification. They reach out to the references. They verify the licenses, the board certification. There are certain cases too, keep this in mind when you're having these conversations, where they can also help you get licensed. Not always, and sometimes it'll be something like an agreement. Like you want to work in X state, you don't have a license in, we'll cover it, we'll pay for it. We'll go through the process, do all the rigorous work to help you get that license. Then you give me 6-month commitment with this client. Pretty good deal at the end of the day, because you can obviously work anywhere else in that state if that's somewhere that you wanted to be after that 6 months. So that happens sometimes, not always. I wouldn't expect that. Those are just certain instances. But the company will do the rigorous heavy lifting of the verifying that significantly takes the administrative burden off both sides. Then you have the hospital credentialing and privileging, which is the next step. The hospital will need to grant temporary or full privileges, and this is another part where the locums company will step in and do most of the heavy lifting to simplify this process, to make it as smooth of a transition as possible for both sides. And given the way that the money works in this world, is you have a pretty aggressive group of people that will be pushing and pushing and pushing a client who's bringing you on. Let's get this paperwork done. Let's get this through. We got to expedite this file. You got to put it above. I don't care if there's 10 other doctors in the queue that are coming in full time, or we got this locums coming in. Let's get it through. Let's push it through. And so they do a lot of heavy lifting for you, which is super helpful. Then you have the concierge service. Locums will take care of all of the travel arrangements, flights, any kind of personal specific needs that you might have, lodging, rental car, all of those things. They have a service, and they usually have, at least most of the companies, larger ones for sure, but most of the companies will have a 24-hour service. So if you fly in somewhere and it's 1 a.m. and they didn't have your room ready, or there's a problem, you get on a call, you immediately get someone who answers it and fixes it for you. So it's quite a positive service. I've worked with various specialties, a lot of psychiatry, a lot of obstetrics and gynecology, and there have been quite a few extravagant needs that sometimes have been raised by doctors and generally provided. So if there's something that you need, it's certainly worth putting it out there and asking. Remember, you are a valuable commodity in this situation. The company is heavily reliant upon you for the work that you do, and so is the client, not to mention the patients. but just from the financial perspective. So all things within reason, I would encourage, but be sure you're asking what you need. Worst thing they can do is say, no, we can't provide it. If you have any kind of special needs or requests, make sure you ask for those. And then, of course, we have the time cards and the billing mechanics. So as the company will bill the client, then they'll take care of making sure you get paid. And you might be getting that same kind of aggressive push. Did you submit your time card? Did you submit your time card? Did you submit your time card? And that's just to make sure that everyone gets paid, because you got to submit your time card. They give it to the client pays, they pay you. And so it's just the circle of life, like the Lion King taught us. And so they handle all of that. It makes it much more simpler for everyone involved. And this is part of where their margin comes from. And then, of course, a big one is that they handle any kind of conflict resolution or disciplinary issues. If you show up and you're being treated horribly, or let's be honest, maybe you're treating someone horribly. Maybe they are just having a hard time working with you, or you are having a hard time working with them. Sometimes things happen. Sometimes it's our fault. Sometimes it's not. Reality is maybe you show up and they're disorganized, or things aren't getting done. Promises made are not promises kept. Maybe you're not submitting your charts on time and they're getting frustrated dealing with that. This is when the company will come in to try to moderate and handle conflict resolution so that everything moves forward smoothly. They need to make sure that the incoming physicians, advanced practitioners are also getting their needs met as well. And the goal, unlike permanent placement, when I would work permanent placement, sometimes we'd get repeat clients. Sometimes I would get a large number of searches, but usually it's one or two here or there. You place someone permanently and then you move on. Locums is different. It's one of the benefits is it's a often consistent engagement and interaction. So a lot of these companies will have worked with these clients, and if someone's doing locums for a long period of time, we'll have built relationships with them, and it makes it much easier to handle these issues. But the reality is they want to keep everyone happy, because that's how the money keeps flowing for everyone. Now, last point I want to wrap up here, and I'm going to copy and paste these probably in the comments or in the description so that you can have a checklist to work off of, but just go over it briefly. Things to keep in mind when you, as a incoming candidate, are looking to work with a locum tenens company. You want to make sure that you're asking certain questions and that you understand how everything works. Not all contracts are created equal. There are no necessarily standardized amounts of pay. It's going to vary by location. It's going to vary by state. It's going to vary by margins. If you have too high of an expectation and they can't find a client to pay that, it's probably not going to go through, and vice versa. There's been times when clients would come in and they would just have such low pay rates, we just either wouldn't take the job, or it's a contingent model. So you can take it and put it out there, but say, no one's going to want to work this. No one's going to want to take this job. But most importantly, to start off with, as you go through this checklist, you want to ask about malpractice coverage. Malpractice coverage is provided for you. Again, the company will provide it. So they're the ones that hold it. The client will pay for it. You want to find out what kind of malpractice coverage that is. There's claims made and occurrence made. Just basic high-level overview. Claims made is a policy that will cover any claims made during that life of the policy. Claims made. So the claim has to be made during the life of the policy. This is the least expensive form. Occurrence-based is different. Occurrence-based will cover any occurrences that happen during the life of that policy, regardless of when the claim is made. It can be made years later. If it occurred during that time when you were working as a locum tenens, you're covered. There's a bit of an exception here. There's something called tail insurance, or sometimes nose insurance, more on the perm side if you're bringing someone in. But this is a bit of a crossover model. A lot of companies will have claims-made policies just because they can't afford some of the occurrence-based. Going to get pretty expensive. You'll see occurrence-based almost as a standard with any kind of psychotropic, psychiatry, neurology, anything that can be like 10 years down the road, I've got these problems from something that happened. Now, the reality is that can happen in any specialty. Obviously, occurrence-based is the best if you can get it. But there's something called tail coverage, which will say you have a claims-made policy, any claim made within the life of this policy with a bit of a tail extension. So it can be a year, a couple of years, 6 months, whatever it is. You want to find out what it is. Is this a claims-made policy? Occurrence-based policy? Is tail coverage? How does it work? Make sure you have a pretty good understanding of how that works. If it is claims-made, get tail coverage and make sure that they're bring that policy for you. Next is the compensation and the payment architecture. You want to find out how everything works, because you could easily find yourself working extra, working overtime, dealing with larger volumes. You want to find out specifically how do these potential contingent situations actual situations work. Now, generally, they're going to go over this with you to say, here's the overtime, here's how it works. But you want to make sure that you are having this conversation and that you understand it so that there's no surprises. You want to find out, is it daily? Is it hourly? What is that daily rate? And what constitutes overtime actually kicking in? What about call schedule? How is that included? When does that kick in? If you're a surgeon and you're getting paid per day and then you have a call schedule that covers weekends, you want to make sure that you understand all the specific details of what payment you have when. You also want to make sure that you have an understanding of the minimum guaranteed payment. If you show up and there's a much smaller patient volume per day or census, that you are still, that through no fault of your own, that you're still making sure you're compensated for your time and for being there. Make sure your contract states that you're covered for that entire payment block. Then you want to find out about payment. Usually it's weekly. You want to find out, what if the client's late? Do I have to wait, or are you going to take care of that? Generally, they're going to take care of that. Generally, a company is going to take care of you because they want you to keep working for them. Some of these things I'm pointing out just so you're aware of it, but sometimes clients are late. Sometimes they're struggling. Sometimes they're chaotic and disorganized, and their billing doesn't get in on time. And that's part of the money that the company, the agency makes, is to pursue that and to handle that and to make sure that you're not interrupted. So generally, you're going to get paid even if the client's lagging. Make sure you ask, do they offer a direct deposit? How does the payment work? Next is travel, lodging, and reimbursement. Are the payments handled up front by the agency, or do you pay them and go through a reimbursement model? Generally, they're going to cover a lot of this for you. There are certain rules and regulations, how much can be spent. We would do these coverages for on-site interviews, cut back significantly because people were coming in flying first class and partying and crashing their rental cars and leaving the hotels in just horrible shape. And either the agency or the client is stuck paying for that. I was on the permanent basis. This stuff kind of happens. There's wild experiences everywhere. But generally, they're going to pay it because it allows them to put certain restrictions on it. By the way, too, if you have special needs, like I mentioned, ask for them. I remember this fellow I placed in Florida, amazing human being, loved working with this guy. He was very large, veteran. He couldn't fly normal class. We got him, it was either first class or we got him bumped up a little bit. He just needed the larger room. Simple request. No problem at all. Dietary restrictions. Make sure that you're sharing any of those. Do you have anything that you need specifically? Like I mentioned, I keep hammering this point because it's one that's often forgotten a lot in locums and permanent, is these really personal specific needs. Sometimes it'll say you can have a couple of drinks, sometimes no alcohol. You also want to make sure, what kind of hotel are you getting? Most companies are going to put you up in a nice place. Again, they want you to be happy. They want you to keep working with them. But you want to make sure you're not putting some low tier, poorly furnished, high crime. Sometimes it's depending on where you work. That's the unfortunate reality of it. But you want to make sure that you're taken care of. You're in a safe place. You're in a good 4-star at least, that you have the rental car that you need. And then another thing, and this is I would always do this when I work permanent as well, is if you are flying, can you keep your loyalty and rewards cards? If you have Delta Sky Miles or you have a hotel points, you can get those. Make sure you ask. They'll use your numbers. Maybe you have a certain rental car that you like to use and you can get points for that. Make sure you're sharing that with them. Share the number with them. Ask them, can I get these points? You should. You absolutely should. You're the one that's actually doing the traveling. Next is out clauses and clinical boundaries. You want to make sure that you're always in a safe situation and that you have a clearly defined out if need be. Hopefully that will never happen. Bad thing is sometimes it does. You want to ask, what is the notice period for the termination with or without cause? Specifically without cause in this situation. But you want to know all of these out instances. Make sure you avoid contracts that put you in uncomfortable situations where you could be clinically unsafe or in a hard environment and you're contractually obligated to remain while going through whatever process might be happening. Just be very careful how that works. Make sure that you always have a safe way out. And you want to ask, is there a chief medical officer or clinical liaison going to be available on site or that you could get in contact with who could handle any immediate peer-to-peer or other kind of issues that arise? Most of the time you will have something like that, but you just want to make sure you know who that is, how to reach them, how to get a hold of them. Last point is to document everything with an email follow-up. You have a conversation with a recruiter on a phone and they make a promise or they say XYZ, always follow that up with an email for confirmation. And you can keep it simple. You can say, thanks for confirming XYZ on our call. Can you please note this in section whatever XYZ of our contract so that we can formalize the signature? Because that's what people in sales and recruiting want to hear. Formalize that signature. I hope this was helpful. If you are a practicing physician, thank you for the work that you do. We are in a severe physician shortage, and unfortunately, it just seems to get worse and worse. My goal is to be able to provide value and service. I believe in taking care of those who take care of us. I'm getting started here. I would appreciate like, subscribe, share. Any comments you have, let me know if there's something specifically you'd like to cover or any questions on this, and I'll be sure to put that highlighted checklist that I had in the comments, and I will see you on the next one.